Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of the Bamboo Lab Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Bosley, and for the better part of the past 26 years, I've had the most distinct and honorable pleasure of working along some of the world's top peak performers. And what we do here each week is we bring those ideas, those experiences, and their wisdom directly to you. Do you sometimes feel like you're stuck on that hamster wheel in life and you're simply spinning and spinning, but you're really not going where you want to go? Well, if so, you have landed in the right spot. The Bamboo Lab Podcast is created, written, and broadcast just for you, all you strivers, thrivers, and survivors out there. All right, some updates. As of this morning, we are now being followed and listened to and broadcasting on 6 continents, 31 countries, 47 states, and in 669 cities. And it's all due to the amazing guests that we bring on here. And today's guest is probably going to be, if not the best, one of the best. That's my expectations of this gentleman. But before we introduce him, I want to read one of our newest heart letters. Actually, this came in August, that I just randomly pulled it up today. And this listener says, "The realness of Brian and his guests is so refreshing. The context is raw, honest, and inspiring. I highly recommend listening to each episode as they all provide amazing insight and guidance that are truly life-changing." So thank you to that guest and to that Bamboo Pack member. We really appreciate it. All right, let us dissect. All right, today we have an amazing gentleman on here, a man of incredible wisdom, incredible experience, and I think you're really going to dig his style. We have Frank Mossett, and Frank and I have gone back a long way. He is the current owner of Cascade Coaching and Consulting, but as a strategic and tactical business coach, he works with the top financial advisors and business owners across the country to build their teams and provide a very superior client experience. He does this on 4 days a month. Prior to coaching, he spent 20 years as an executive leader in a Fortune 250 company. The theme he focused on was results matter. Is that what the shareholders expected? But today he believes that results still matter, but he really believes now that a critical component should be the second priority. That should be the second priority, even though it's critical. The first priority can be described as in one word: happier. If you love coming to work, you have a positive impact on your clients and people you work with, you're living a healthy life, and you are growing personally and professionally, results will inevitably follow. Obtaining consistent, sustainable results while having fun is the perfect combination. And I think you'll find Frank extremely fun, but very, very driven. Currently, he's not taking on new clients, but if you really want to be put on the waiting list, you can message him at www.cascade-coaching.com, and that will be included in the text of this broadcast. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have Frank Mossett on the Bamboo Lab Podcast today. Frank, welcome to the podcast.
Frank, thanks for having me. It feels like you're going to send me a bill for that commercial.
Oh, yeah, it's coming, trust me, because I know you'd send me one. All right. Well, Frank, you and I go back a long way, and I have some stories I'll share with the audience here as we go through stories I didn't even prepare you for. But I know a lot about you. But can you please tell the Bamboo Pack, who's Frank Mossett? Where are you from?
Absolutely. I'm a pretty average guy, Brian. I grew up in Michigan, a small town. We lived in Detroit early in my life, 4th grade. I think my dad said he's got to get the kids out of Detroit, and he wanted to own a restaurant, so we bought a restaurant up in the Thumb area of Michigan. So I grew up on the upstairs, 3rd floor of this restaurant, and worked it. I worked it through high school, through college. Even when we'd come home from college, you'd end up working in that restaurant if it was busy. But, no different than I think a lot of the listeners. We didn't have money. There's times we didn't have a car. But I remember running cash down to pay the gas bill, right? But I came from the heart of the earth. Just my mom, my dad, they worked 60, 70 hours a week. I don't know if they loved what they did, but they knew they needed to do it. They needed to do it to take care of the family. And I'll tell you, from a childhood, I look back now, I retired at 45. My sister retired at 51, and my brother just retired at 52 as a principal of high school. And we all did it because we watched my parents work like dogs. And the only sad part of that story, maybe, Brian, is they got into a car accident, scared the hell out of them. They closed the restaurant at age 70, and my dad passed away a year and a half later. My mom fairly shortly after. So they, as kids, we knew we didn't want to do that, but we also understood the power between hard work and getting where you want out of life. So, I mean, the normal guy, Brian.
Well, the Bamboo podcast is all about normal people who do extraordinary things. So I think you qualify. I got to ask you, and this is a story. This is when I think of you, Frank, and I've known you now for probably close to 30 years. The one thing I think of so often is you selling advertising when you were young. And I know what you sold. I think I do anyway, from what I remember, because every time I go into a restaurant and there's one on the table, I think of you. But I know you started doing some advertising work in high school. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I'm laughing because that was so long ago, but yeah. So I worked in the restaurant. We had this group of people that would come in. It was business owners. And you'd wait on them, right? They'd come in at 1 o'clock. The coffee owner, the business owners of town would come in and have coffee, and I'm sure try to solve all the world problems. It was one day we were talking to one of the guys in that coffee crew about getting new menus and for the restaurant, and they were $150. It was like $135, and that was a lot of money. There's no way my parents were gonna funnel out that much money for something at that phase, right? So I'm waiting on these guys, and one of the other business owners said, Frank, why don't you go sell 4, 5, 6 ads, put it on the menu, that pays for the menus, and you basically get them for free. And my dad's like, that's a great idea, Frank. Go do it. So that was the start of it. So it's interesting. I talked to everybody in the restaurant. I went door to door for a while, and I ended up selling, I think, 10 ads at $25 a piece. It's not a lot of money, $250, right?
Right.
So I get these things printed for $135 or $140, and all of a sudden I made $100. Right, I had 20 minutes invested in that. Like, this is genius. Right? So I tried it again with another restaurant, and the menus were so complicated to get the pricing right and the product and all that. That was killing so much time. I'm like, there's no way I'm going to do this. But what it turned into is I talked to the printer. So why don't you do placemats? And then we'll put them underneath the people's plates as they eat, and go around the state of Michigan and do festivals. So when you see a festival, promote that festival, sell advertising that went around it. And so that's what the business started at. Well, it started as menus, and it turned into placemats. And there's a cool story with this one, Brian. I haven't shared it with a lot of people, but I put my strategy in play. I remember we didn't have a lot of money, so I had a pair of khakis. I still laugh when I look at this outfit. They're probably 2 inches too short. White socks, a pair of boat type shoes. But I bought a brand new white shirt because that's what my dad said. He said, you got to have a white shirt. So I put that on, and I think I had a pink skinny tie. Right. So now that I've been a senior in high school, weighing all of probably 100. Well, I would have. I was wrestling 112 at that time, so I was weighing 110 pounds. Right. I'm like, all right, off I go. So I drove off to a new town, and boy, I still remember driving around that town, so damn scared to get out of the car, so scared. But finally, I parked it. I started walking, and 9:30 to 1, I didn't sell a damn thing. And there's a lesson here. There's a huge lesson in life. I had a lot of people say, come back at 2. They're probably not going to buy, but come back at 3. Well, whoever said come back, I came back. And in that afternoon, the last 2 or 3 hours I was working, I think I sold 14 ads. And then, all right, and I think it was $30 a piece or whatever that would be. 4 or 5, $420 or $450, whatever I sold were. And man, it was like I won the lotto. I was so excited. On the cool part of this, Brian, and this is a testament to my mom and dad. My mom and dad knew I was going out that day. And I didn't find this out for probably a decade afterwards. They were role-playing in the restaurant that what they were going to tell me if I landed on my face. They're how to get me back up off the ground and wipe the dirt off, if you will. So I came home, it was $420. So this put in perspective, I was paying $125 to get these placemats printed. So this was damn near 40 years ago. I mean, it's $300. That would have been, you'd had to work at the party store 30 hours, 40 hours a week for a month to make that back then, it seemed.
Yep.
I came home with the biggest smile on my face. My parents like, how'd it go? And I just, tear in my eye, I'm like, it went awesome. So that's how the business started. And I started just traveling throughout the thumb area of Michigan, different towns, different festivals, and did that through college. I mean, I was making $50,000 a year as a college student, working 2 months out of the year doing this.
Wow.
It was an awesome business. Hired a couple people, and then I had a bunch of life-changing events, good in college, that really pushed my career in a different avenue. And that'd be worthy of a conversation, because I've shared that story with a lot of people as well. But that was the starting point of that business. And it's, I just saw one of the guys who used to work for me. He's CEO for a big company in Chicago. So not only what I learned, what others learn. Brian, when you have to go door to door in a town you've never been, selling an intangible piece of advertising, it gets easier the third, fourth time you go into town because they know who you are. But the first time, who is this guy?
Right.
Is he going to take my money or is he not? Is he going to actually show up? And luckily, it all worked out for me. So many good learnings from that business. Oh.
Did you finally get to buy a pair of pants that fit you?
I did eventually.
Did you get a better tie?
I did that too. It was funny. I had a Chevy Monza, 1980 Chevy Monza with no air conditioning. And it was a cool, back then it was a cool car. If you couldn't afford a Mustang, the Chevy Monza was the next one, right? Oh. No air conditioning till 2:00. Not only am I looking like an idiot how I was dressed, I'm soaking wet. So I think my sophomore year in college, I broke down and bought a car with air conditioning. And that summer, it paid for the car because I could actually work until 5:00 in the afternoon versus go sit underneath a shade tree someplace.
I got to imagine that grit and thick skin you developed during that time really helped you when you became a professional as an advisor, and then going into leadership and coaching and training other people.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Many of the most memorable brand campaigns have been driven by cutting-edge marketers who are driving innovation and massive growth for some of the most beloved brands. This season, we're getting a fresh perspective and highlighting women marketers who are making an impact in both crypto and mainstream brands. As always, we'll discuss the most pressing challenges and opportunities facing our industry, while uncovering the brave marketing moments that have led these marketers to where they are today.
It did, and it's when you sell advertising, you want to sell their idea, right? So you'd put a business card size ad on there, but you do creative things like put a picture, or you'd break out of the border, and make the ad look special. And what I found is if you could get somebody looking up and smiling what you could do with their business or their logo or a message for them, if you could get that smile from them, that would be cool. If they said that, they were going to buy from you. Mm-hmm. Just to put their business card, that's not enough. But if I put them in a corner and I did something, a reverse print we used to do where it would be black and their name would come out in white, if you will, or whatever color we're using, you'd see them smile and they'd say, I like that. Then it was sold. And that was a fun part of it.
Yeah, I can imagine. I didn't realize, there was always a mythos, even before I met you. When I was in Okemos, Michigan, you were in the Detroit area. I don't know if you were in Toledo or I don't know what office you were in at the time. Maybe it was, I forget, Brighton or somewhere. But I remember, Frank Mossett, I heard the name several times. And then the story of you selling placemat ads, when you were younger, I knew that before I even met you. I had no idea you were making $50,000 a year off of 2 months in the summertime. We would have become friends a lot sooner.
It was a great gig. That's why I kept doing it for a few years after college.
Oh, I could imagine. Well, it's with the thing about you, Frank, and I shared this with you a little bit before our call. Your style is very disarming, which I think is really helpful when you're obviously when you were younger in sales and walking around with khaki pants that are two inches too short. But even when you were an advisor, then going into leadership and executive leadership, and I'm assuming it's the same with you in Cascade Coaching now, is to get to know the first time to get to know you, you seem very like just an average dude, like kind of disarming. In fact, if I didn't know any better, if I was younger and cockier like I used to be, I'd probably think to myself, "Oh, I can take advantage of this guy, and I'll bully him around." And as soon as you open your mouth, that instantly that mythos has disappeared, because your style is very approachable. You kind of have a smart ass look sometimes on your face, and your little side glances that kind of, makes you realize Frank's paying attention. But then as soon as you start talking, there's instant respect and credibility there. And I think that's probably gotten so much more over the years. And I think that's kind of been the style I've always associated with you, is laid back, but as soon as the ball drops, it's game on, and there's nobody more competitive than you. I don't think there's anybody that I worked with over the years that's more competitive than you. So that's a good style.
Well, I appreciate this. Kind of you to say, Brian. I've always had that attitude of, and I used to have themes, right? One was have fun and create wealth. And I was training stockbrokers or financial advisors, so have fun. If you're not smiling, you're not high-fiving people, you're not giggling, you're not laughing, you're not going to get the most out of it.
No. Right?
So have fun and create wealth. If I can help you as an advisor, I still do a little bit out of that side. Helping people manage your money is, if I can help you get to retirement or educate your children or buy a new house, live debt-free, I'm creating you wealth, or creating your wealth for you. I'm going to do it the same thing for me. I'm making money along the way. So if I can help you create wealth and have fun, I just think that's the combination that works. And I've tried doing that my entire career. Are we having more fun because I'm here? Are people smiling more often? If the answer is yes, then then I'm doing my job as a leader.
Oh yeah. Well, I want to share with the Bamboo Pack that I can honestly say that Frank is one of the 5 biggest impetuses to where I am today. And for those who don't know, when I started my consulting firm November 20th of 1996, my first 12 to 18 months were not good. I mean, I had a Saab that I had to return to the dealership because I couldn't pay it. So that had to be repossessed. I had to drive it to the dealership in Novi, Michigan, and walk back to my apartment. And I mean, I literally was digging in my couch at times looking for money. I bought an old car that kept breaking down. I had to borrow my first client's 16-year-old daughter's car to drive to see my client for a week or two while I got mine repaired. And then I got a call from Frank, or an email one day, and he was the field vice president in Portland, Oregon for American Express Financial Advisors, still I think it was. And he said, "Hey, what are you doing? I know you're doing some consulting." I said, "Yeah, and I probably acted like I was rolling in cash, and I was running down to the payphone to return calls. I had a pager. I didn't even have a phone. I had a pager. And he said, "Well, you did this Market Pulse program when you were with the company. Can you come out to Portland and put together my team?" So I probably acted like I was busy, but I wasn't. And I flew out there, and I was out there for 6 months working alongside of Frank's team. And it really was the first start of me really working with American Express again, Ameriprise Financial, going back to my mothership. And then from there, the referrals and the networking and the marketing really paid off. But Frank was my first, I would say, big haircut. And he gave me my first big shot. So for that, my friend, I'm indebted to you for life.
I think our budgets were good enough that we still had a senior leader that was willing to aggressively invest in new people at the time. I probably didn't even nickel and dime you that much.
You didn't at all. In fact, you paid me more than I thought I was worth. I know that. And I don't know if you remember, but the time I went down to from Portland to Eugene, Oregon to watch the Ducks play Michigan State in football, and I was with a few people. You weren't there, but I was with a few people from the organization, and we got disconnected down there for some reason. Everybody scrambled, and I didn't have a way home, so I had to get a cab from Eugene to Portland, which is 100 and some miles. And I billed it to you, and you paid it. I mean, I had to go to the ATM when I got there to pay the cab driver, but you paid it. No, I mean, it was you definitely were you were paying very well back then. So,
well, the funny part about that was Oregon at the time when we went out there, I went out there, was sort of an unknown, right?
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't a big group. It wasn't in the top numbers for anything. It was Detroit, Boston, Florida, Texas. We're killing it with new advisor development, hiring people. And for those listening, you have to hire them, then train them. So, you have 2 years of in-depth training when you hire a broker to get them even close to being ready. So we put that in play in Oregon. And Brian, with your help, without the new clients, you can't do it. With your help, we were the top first-year advisor program in the nation that year. and to pass Texas or some of the powerhouses, if you will, at the time, is we would hire people and they'd stay with us. Everybody else was losing a third of their people. They were quitting or failing out. We were keeping almost everybody. And I think it was a lot. Your market pulses. How do you bring on clients? Because that's the toughest part.
Well, and the thing is too, the environment out there was fun. It was a good group of people. It was fun. People wanted to be in the program, and you really set the program up before I even got there. I remember the first time we met was I think it was in Eugene or Bend, maybe it was. I don't know. We did you flew me in. I did a day or something with everybody. Then we started coaching, and people were excited to be part of the program. It was sold before I even got there, and they felt honored to be doing this Market Pulse thing, and they were fun people. I mean, I'm still friends with a lot of them to this day. That was 24 years ago, something like that. I mean, it was in that ballpark. It was a long time ago.
Yeah, that brings a smile to my face. I just, 2 of my kids were born out in Oregon. What a great adventure that was.
Oh yeah. Then you went from there. Did you go? You didn't go from there to Boston, did you?
I went from there to Kansas City.
That's
they
right.
wanted to open an operation, and we had, I think, 8 first-year advisors at the time, and I was coming from 100 plus in Oregon. And we killed it in Kansas next. And you helped with that. I mean, we went from, again, bottom to Kansas City at one time. It still would be. I think today it would be considered the largest office Ameriprise have ever had for new advisor development.
Really? Oh, wow.
It was hiring good people and having fun and helping people make some money.
I've been just
it's not easy. It's for these people that are getting into sales or building a business. I mean, I always said you're walking through a swamp.
Yeah.
You look and it's just water, right? But then you start walking a few feet, and you're like, oh shit, it's getting a little mucky. At some phase, you're going to be up to your neck, and if you can keep people with a nice vision and listen to them and show them love, by the time they start complaining, they're halfway out of the swamp. You're like, look back, look how far we've come.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have that much farther to go, and that's the culture that I loved putting in place. I mean, that was my game, right? That was it.
And was it there to Boston then?
There to Boston, where I ran the Northeast, and my wife wanted to get closer back with her parents, and we moved back to the Midwest, and they kept adding states to my territory. And when we negotiated, this is a lesson for everybody in life. My boss said a couple times, "Is it in writing?" I'm like, "No," but we talked about it. It's not in writing; it didn't happen. But we talked about keeping the territory smaller for states, and they reduced some positions and kept adding states to my territory. And eventually, Brian, I said, "Hell with it." I preach about having fun, about loving what you're doing, and I'm on an airplane 2-3 days a week. I mean, I was making stupid money, but I've always saved over a third of what I made, so we were fine financially. And that was the end of my career, really, at Ameriprise as a leader. I went to a really good friend of mine, Stevie Wimber's funeral. He was 47, 48, an unbelievable man. And on the way home, my wife and I were talking about it, and he had similar age kids as I did. I'm like, what the hell am I doing working 50, 60 hours a week traveling, missing my kids' sporting events? I don't need the money, right? I want the money, but I don't need the money. Well, what trade-off am I making in life right now? And the next week or two, I gave my boss my notice, and I think it took a month because they had to let the CEO know and do all that stuff. And he was super cool about it. He let me move on, and it worked out.
Did you find, Frank, that you just weren't enjoying the work at that point? Was it you didn't enjoy what you were doing, you just didn't enjoy the hours that you were doing it? What was it that really you realized I'm compromising a core principle in my life?
You're going to tease me on this one, but one thing I love waking up next to my wife every morning.
Mm-hmm.
And when you force me to travel 2-3 days a week, that takes that away. But the business was changing, and it's changed dramatically. It's went from hiring people with a lot of talent or potential to basically pulling brokers from other firms. So you're more of a high paid recruiter, if you will.
Right.
And I didn't enjoy that. I mean, part of it was some of these people you're recruiting had financial problems, went through a divorce or whatever, and they were moving because they had to. Others were moving because they wanted better technology, a better company. And those were fun because you could move them over and really create something cool. But it really moved into that direction, and I didn't enjoy that as much.
Yeah, that's what I see still today, Frank, is some of these brokers, some are running away from something and others are running towards something. And it's the ones that are running towards something that are the ones that you really want to work with in today's field, in today's environment. So what was that transition like for you? Because you were always a hard charger. You worked the hours. I mean, you never really, dust never settled on you. So what was it like to say, okay, I'm done, and then go to more of a solitary, more of a laid back lifestyle every day? What was that transition like?
Before I did it, I put together a list of 100 things that I wanted to do and learn. So that was helpful, but it was hard. It was another good friend of mine was CFO of a pretty big company, and he retired the same time. And we couldn't tell anybody, our spouses, but it was not public information. So you retired, you couldn't tell anybody, your friends, because it's not public yet, right?
Right.
So we would, Tom was his name. When we finally retired, Tom and I would go to the gym. We'd play racquetball, and we'd lift weights for a little while. And we'd play basketball. We'd go sit in the sauna. And then we'd take a swim in the pool, and we'd go home. I mean, we were killing 3 hours at the gym because both of us we were so used to working so much. Mm-hmm. What the hell do you do all day? But it's like anything. As soon as you develop the habits, you get up and you go for a walk or work out with your wife. You try, like I play hockey a lot now. You start to get habits and you fulfill it in a different way. The tough part was not being there to help everybody or as big of a group. I became much closer with my kids and did a lot more with them.
Okay.
But you sort of get that from consulting, and that as a consultant. I mean, you change somebody's life. They're all of a sudden they're healthier, they're making more money, they're smiling more, and they're giving this is life changing. Thank you. That I was able to pick up from consulting, and that's still selfishly why I do the consulting.
Sure. Yeah, you're not doing it for the money. You're doing it more for the satisfaction, the ability to contribute to change lives still, because you've been doing that for 30, 40 years.
It is, and it's somewhat guilt-free spending, right?
Yeah, right.
Because that money that comes in, it's all right, I'm going to go do something silly with it.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hey, it's Christina Nicholson from the Become a Media Maven podcast. I'm interrupting real quick because while you're here in the podcast app, make sure you head over to Become a Media Maven when you're done listening to this episode. On Become a Media Maven, I talk to all kinds of industry experts, and I share my own experience from my job as a TV reporter and anchor, and now as the owner of a PR agency. So if you've ever wanted to earn big-time media exposure without spending money on ads, so more people knew about you, your business, your brand, your products, or your services, then I got you covered at Become a Media Maven.
Well, you had shared, I know in the one time in your life, you were in the process or the consideration of writing a book, designing your future, and you were to reach out to me. Where's that at?
I did. I put a lot of time into that damn book, Brian. There's an interesting end to it. But when I was in college, my professor, Dr. Ellis, and I became pretty close. And part of that was, how often does a college professor have a student who actually owns an advertising business that's doing the production, that's selling it, that can talk about it?
Mm-hmm.
And we were going through career searching of what do you want to do? An ad agency. You could, at the time I just didn't know how to scale. It was Frank's Advertising. Then it was Frank's Advertising, a division of Mossett Marketing was the name of it. Then I switched it to Mossett Marketing. So with Frank's Advertising, I couldn't have other people sell for me. Not the same way I didn't, at least in my mind. So he had me do this exercise, and I've shared this with literally thousands of college kids. And I think it's had a profound impact on a lot of people. And since I've taken some of Doug Lennox's work and other people's work and integrated into it. But he said, Frank, I want you to do a storyboard of your life, what you want your life to look like. He says, 1 through 3 years, 1 through 5, 5 through 10, 10, at year 10, what do you want? Year 20, what do you want? He said, but this is not a one-day exercise. He's like, I want you to put a lot of thought into it. And at the time, I just did a commercial, and mock-up commercial for, and I killed it on this one. It was, remember the Duracell? I'll get back to my story. Remember the Duracell bunny that would go around or the Energizer bunny?
Yeah. He'd bang his little finger.
Yeah, so my commercial was a Duracell bunny came out with boxing gloves and smacked the shit out of that little bunny. And stood at the end with rubbing his hands up and down. Like, should have went live with that. But that was the conversation. Then we go back. I get off this subject, but we go back to the subject of what do you want your life to look like? I gave so much thought to it, and the first part was hard. Year 10, I drew a picture of 4 children, a picket fence. I started drawing a picture of a second home, of coaching their baseball. And man, it's so vivid. These pictures were so clear, and I was so excited about what I was drawing. But then I kept coming back to the next 5 years. What do I want? And after a lot of soul searching, I put one slide was me with a blue suit, white shirt, red tie, work, being successful. And the second picture was me sitting on a boat holding a Budweiser can. And there's a lesson on this, because at year 10, at year 20, and the grandkids, the traveling and everything that I wanted to do required 1, money, but 2 is some flexibility. Mm-hmm. And when I came back and talked to the professor, he just left. He looked at the Budweiser like, really? I'm like, yeah, the next 5 years, I just want to position myself to win. I've got 5 years before I have kids. I'm going to just put my head down. I want to work as hard as I possibly can, save as much money as I can, and put myself in the best position I can to win and to live that life. So that was the first part of the exercise. And, my wife had a little bit of a health issue in between our second and third child, so we ended up with 3. So I still accomplished basically that picture I have, right? Mm-hmm. But then he said the second part of the equation was list the jobs or the careers that you think you'd like to do. And cross-reference. So one was advertising executive. Well, you talk to those people. They work a lot of hours. They change jobs a lot. And I didn't feel that was conducive. I don't like change. To me, I want to stay where I'm at. To move to 10 different careers was never my thing. And then the third was, our exercise was how much money do you need to live that life? And will that career or that position allow you to live the life both spiritually, if you will, and financially? And Brian, I'll tell you, that changed my life. I still do that exercise. I still draw out, and that's part of Doug Lennox's training of, be the star in your movie. If you're going to have a movie, you're going to be the star in it. What does that star do?
Right. It's a simple genius.
Simple genius.
Mm-hmm. Wow. That's great. So I'm going to recapture this. So what you did, this was a college professor gave you this exercise. You put a storyboard of your life, and then you did like the 3 to 5, and then 5 to 10, but what was really more vivid was that 10 plus years where you saw the family and the picket fence and the 5 kids and the wife, and then you saw that's where you were going, and then, okay, how do I get there? You wanted to position yourself for that. You saw yourself on the boat with a Bud Light or Budweiser can. You saw yourself in a suit, and then now you looked at the third step is, okay, list, or I guess that would be the second step. The first step. Second step would be list the jobs and careers that you'd like to do. And then the third step is, well, will that job or those careers allow you to have that flexibility as well as that wealth to get you to there? Is that did I capture that okay?
That's exactly right. And when you do that, you start to see contradictions.
Mm.
One, will it produce enough money? I mean, listen, I have school teachers throughout my family, principals and school teachers. I have enormous amount of respect. But I wanted my wife to have the option to stay at home. I wanted multiple houses. And as an example, as a school teacher, you'd had to do a business on the side or something else, right? Just financially, that wouldn't be as real. So I knew the money had to come. But I was able to cross-reference. And I think that's what brought me more towards financial services, truthfully.
So, all right. So I'm just trying to mark this. So, with you working 4 days a week, and I remember one time you told me on the phone when I was working, I think I was working with your team in Boston at the time, and you said, Bosley, your life is just a working vacation, because I worked out of my house and I still do. The office is in the house, but now your life really is a working vacation. I mean, you're working 4 days a month. How does Tracy deal with that?
When I first retired, that was a problem. She's like, you got to go. I'm not used to you being around so much, right? And when we did, we'd go do, I'd go do my thing, she'd do hers. You start to build that relationship and you get closer with your spouse, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we'll go for walks and, go out to eat. But I still get up. I read a couple hours.
Good.
I probably work more than 4 days a month. I mean, I still have a financial planning practice, and that's 1 day every 2 weeks is fully dedicated to consulting, and then a half day every week. So the rest is managing a client base. I think that's the next chapter, Brian, for everybody. And then those listening, you've got to find hobbies. And part of that's staying in shape, staying healthy. I started playing ice hockey 5-6 years ago from a guy who couldn't skate to now I'm still bad, but I'm not horrible. Just take on new things.
I love that. All right. So where's the book?
I started to put it together. I'm like, all right, what am I going to do with this? Well, the only thing I could think about was you do tours, right? And sell them to colleges and people making career changes. And like, hell, everything about that is what I don't want to do for a living.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, there was no alignment with writing that book. I still have that conversation, and my good friends, most of my friends, I've talked to their kids about this exercise in depth. And I truly think it makes a difference. Some of these kids just don't think about the long term and the not so obvious.
Mm.
The short term, it sounds great, but long term, are you willing to do it? Is it fit who you are as a person? Because if you know this, if you love what you're doing, it's not work.
Right.
And if you hate what you're doing, I don't care if it's an hour a week or 40 hours a week, that still sucks.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
In the accounting profession, sustainability is opening doors to problem solving, innovation, and strategic planning. Download Foresight, the CPA podcast, for new insights every 2 weeks, and listen to guest speakers such as Bettina Pierre-Gilles, the CEO of Luxium Renewables Group Limited, and Guy Cormier, President and CEO of Desjardins Group. You'll learn about top-of-mind topics including future-proofing careers for CPAs, renewable power in the oil and gas sector, shareholder capitalism versus stakeholder capitalism, and lots more. Listen, subscribe, or follow now wherever you get your podcasts.
No, I 100% agree. And I do have I know a lot of people who just despise their job. I don't get that. I just, and my son Dawson says it best, he said, Dad, I don't get when some of the people we're around complain about their jobs. Why don't they just change jobs? And I don't understand it either. I mean, I love what I do. I mean, I'm worn as thin as an old knife blade at times, especially during COVID when I was doing, 60, 70 coaching sessions a week. I was worn down by Friday. I had very little juice left in my battery. I was the Energizer battery bunny getting his ass kicked by the Duracell bunny. But, I could do it again Monday morning. I'm looking forward to Mondays, and I still do. And I just think that that's a gift that very few people have. You are one of those few people, like Doug Linnick, Bill Williams, are people, Gay Hendricks, that we've had on the podcast already, are people who just love what we do. And when you do that, life is good. You know, Ray Kelly, the same thing. He mentioned the same thing in the podcast. Well, go ahead.
No, you're right. And it's, I've said this to a lot of people getting ready to retire. If you're good at what you're doing and you're excelling and you know it, when you retire, other stuff is going to come up.
Yeah.
I mean, I do a ton with real estate, and my son runs a lot of that, but works with a lot of it. I do the consulting. I'm in a big team practice for financial services, but for me, delegation has always been a big avenue of getting the work done. And you get some people that are more control freaks. They want to do everything themselves. And I've never been that guy. If I have somebody that's like you that knew the market pulse inside and out, I knew it, but not as well as you did. Why would I try to attempt something, work twice as hard when I can buy my way out of that problem, bring in somebody that's much better, and do it in less time, right?
Well, I'm glad you think that way. I'm glad you thought that way 24 years ago. I'd still be digging out of my couch looking for coins to pay rent. Still trying to crack into my daughter's piggy bank. You know, so for the Bamboo Pack, the Market Pulse that Frank has mentioned a couple of times was a marketing program that we established when I was still with American Express Financial, and I was one of the people who helped create it. So when I left the firm and started my consulting firm, I think it was 18 months later when Frank called me and said, "Hey, can we bring you out here as an outside consultant to put this marketing program in place for financial advisors?" So that was the name of the program at the time, was Market Pulse. Frank, so you've gone, looking at all of the things you've gone through, and you have gone through a lot in your career. And it's really, when your career, what I see from the outside as a friend and as a former, consultant to your people, I don't see a lot of dips. It seemed like it really went up very much like an Ibbotson chart, stock market chart, over the course of years. But obviously there were dips in there that some people didn't see, or at least, unless you were very close to you didn't see them. So with that in mind, what is the most difficult thing you've ever gone through, and how did you overcome it?
Boy, I've had a number of challenges, as any leader would, or person. It's probably not the best example, but it's a challenge that I fought when I was in Kansas City. My name was high on the ranking. I'm top ranked across the board, and it was a field vice president position. The next level would have been a group vice president. Mm-hmm. And I remember one year a job came open, and it was in Chicago, which would have been closer to Michigan, would have fit. But it was my son was second grade. I was coaching his baseball team, and we had a chance to win the championship. And if I took this job, I would have to get rid of the coaching altogether. And that was a challenging decision, Brian. That was, what the hell do you do? My career's here. But how often, when in life am I ever going to have the opportunity to coach my second grade kids' baseball team and win a champion? And so, at the time I read a book called Mastery, and I'm sure you've read it a few times. Yes. And I really took on that whole idea of enjoying the plateau. Mm-hmm. And I didn't take the job. I turned it down. I turned the next two down because it wasn't right for my family. And I converted to a different theme in life. And the theme for a while was, how do I get stuff done in less time? And I became a master of delegation, of time management. If there was a book on time management, I read it, right? Stephen Covey's still probably my favorite book on time management, 7 Habits, or 1 Minute Manager Meets the Monkey on delegation. There's just some awesome work out there that you can copy. But my view changed, and my last boss hated this idea, but my whole idea was, I want to be the highest paid leader and work the least amount of hours.
I love that.
And, some leaders want you to work hours. For me, the people who work for me, I don't need you to work a lot of hours. I just need you to get results. If you can get results in 20 hours, why do I force you to work 40? Mm-hmm. I never got that. But that became my focus for 3-4 years. And Brian, it changed my life dramatically. Because now I talk about, how do you I really talk a lot to people when I coach about what's the value of your hour. So if you're making $100 an hour, as an example, I put it on a pyramid, and above the pyramid, I put, in the middle, I put 100, and I put 255, 750, 1,000. Below it, I put 50, 20, 10, and negative, right? And I talk about three ways to move up your hourly wage. Speed, which is how quick do you do it? What are your systems? What are your processes? Are you grouping the work together? Delegation, find really good people to get this job done. Or elimination. So speed, delegation, elimination is, you look at it, why am I doing this? Because I've always done it. No, that's not the answer we're looking for. Why are you doing it? Talk to your clients, and if they don't need it or want it, well, then stop doing it. Mm-hmm. But that whole delegation side, I can't tell you how many managers that used to work for me that are making $1 million a year as financial advisors now, because they learned that theory behind, you don't have to get the job done. You just need to make sure it gets done. It's not you that has to put the hours in. Who cares who does the work?
Right. I know a few of those advisors. What
was that last part?
I know a few of those advisors that you're discussing. Yeah, that you're talking about. What I look at that, Frank, is I always say to be the highest, to make the most amount of money you possibly can in life on the least amount of human cost, which is time, energy, and stress. And that's the real definition of success. We all know people who have worked ungodly hours, sacrificed family, sacrificed their emotional, their physical, their spiritual health to become extremely wealthy. That's not success to me. And we know people who, don't have any energy, or don't have any stress, have all kinds of time, and but don't make any money. That's not success. To me, it's the most amount of money you can on the least amount of human cost, which is time, energy, and stress. And that's exactly what you're talking about. I love the speed, delegation, and elimination. I just wrote that down, that pyramid. I think I'm going to start using that myself. So right now, I'm going to call it quasi-retired, but you're retired from the leadership role, but now doing consulting on your terms. What's a win for you at this point in your life? What do you consider a victory?
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Sophie Riley, the host of Create, Automate, and Scale podcast, a podcast created to support coaches, course creators, and service providers build an epic business. Tune into this inspirational, straight to the point, relatable content to help you mastermind the everyday hassle, give you business tip, networking opportunity, shameless money talk, and scaling secret. It's time to stop trading dollars for hours and hit that 6-figure and beyond. I am dropping a whole new season about building your money-making list. So subscribe now to Create, Automate, and Scale podcast, and I'll see you there.
My oldest son is in the real estate business with me, and he's doing well. So watching him do well and watching him, hire people to work for him and use this idea of delegate to the right people. That's fun. Mm-hmm. My middle kid's going to law school, so I'll work with her on the same thing. So I'm having fun working with my own kids. But then, on the consulting side, that's always a good experience. Maybe not always, but a lot of times it is. To me, that's where I'm spending more of my energy right now. And I'm trying to be really aware of my health. I'm in my 53. Mm-hmm. And, you either let your health start to drop at this age or you improve it. Man, Brian, I want to live to 100.
Yeah, me too.
I want to watch my grandkids have kids.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that's what life's all about.
Well, let's make a pact that we together, when we reach 100, we get together and maybe have a gin and tonic or a beer.
Shot of Jaeger. Didn't we used to do shots of Jaeger back then?
Yeah, we did. Yep. I can't imagine putting a shot of Jaeger in my body today. I guess I could under the right circumstances. If I hit 100 and you hit 100, but by then I'll be 102. So
I have a bucket next to us. You take it and spit it right back out.
Somebody can wheel us. Yeah, exactly. We'll get wheeled into the room and do a shot of Jaeger with a bucket tied to our wheelchair. No, I'm with you. That's my goal too. I've told many people I want to live to. I want to be a centenarian. I want to get to that 100 mark and then still keep going. My mom is 87. She still works. She's in great health, and And I think I have more of her gene pool than my father, who he passed away at 36 of a massive heart attack. So I think I was blessed more with my mother's genetics than my dad's. You know, you probably don't remember, or maybe you do. Do you remember the time we were in Monterey, California for a leadership conference? And we were kind of told, go to the big sessions, but don't bother going to the breakout sessions. Go enjoy yourself. And you and I and Will Lee, you had rented, I think it was a Chrysler LeBaron convertible. And I don't know, that's what I think it was. And we drove up in the mountains. Do you remember that?
I do. Didn't we get in a heap full of trouble for skipping a bunch of conferences those classes?
Yeah, we did. We were kind of told not to. At least I was instructed, go up there and let the company's money let you have a good time, because we were obviously in the number one market group in the nation. So I think maybe we had a little bit of an ego. But I remember we stopped at an old bookstore. It was like from what I remember, and that was a long time ago, but I remember it was kind of a dilapidated building up in the Big Sur Mountains. And we went in there and I bought a book for 50 cents. It was called The E-Myth, and by Michael Gerber. And I brought it home, and it wasn't until probably 3 years later that I picked it up and read it, and it changed the way I coached people. And that's when I was still doing some coaching with, I had American Express clients, but I was still doing some small business owners in Lansing, Detroit, Ann Arbor. And I built a program for small businesses on the E-Myth Revisited, or the E-Myth, now it's called the E-Myth Revisited, but on that original book that I bought for 50 cents. I remember we came across an accident. Somebody had smashed into I think it was already cleared, but there was this, I don't know, whether maybe the ambulance was still there, had smashed into one of those big sequoia trees. It's funny how the things you remember, but I remember it was you and I and Will Lee, because I remember Will Lee in the back seat with that big smile on his face.
A tall guy.
Yeah.
Maybe 6'5" or 6", whatever he was. He was taller than both of us.
Oh yeah, he was.
Yeah, I remember that. I forgot about a book you bought, but especially for teams, that's an amazing book.
Oh, there's a client I have right now in Spokane, Washington. This morning I was talking to him, and he was going through talking about that. I said, okay, here's what I need you to do. Go out and buy that book or have you and your team read that book, because it addresses the idea of becoming are you an entrepreneur? Are you a manager? Are you a technician? And if you're going to run a business or be a part of a growing enterprise, you got to have that entrepreneurial mindset. And, kind of delegate the management, delegate the technical issues to other people, as you just talked about, delegation. All right, this is the question that you're only the second one I've asked this, but when a gentleman by the name of Dave Dick, and I think you probably know Dave.
Mm-hmm. I do. Really good guy out of Oregon. I mean, he was at the time.
Yeah, now he's in Dallas.
Texas, right?
Yeah. And he said this to me. He called me last Wednesday, and he said, I got a thing for you. He said, your podcast is going well. We love it. Everybody loves it. He said, but you capture what your listener or your guests say. He said, but what about asking this question and have it to be a write it down moment for your audience? And he was like, I don't want to offend you, Brian. You're doing great. I don't want to mess with your art. I'm like, I don't care. I just started this thing. I'm still learning, man. I'll take any feedback, good or bad. And he said, have somebody kind of summarize what their recipe for success is. And so if you could go back, Frank, and talk to your 20-year-old self now, 32 years later, what would you say to that young man standing there? What would be the best advice you can give them that you think the members of the Bamboo Pack could take away from today?
It's a great question. And it doesn't surprise me David brought that up. He's a talented guy. He's just a good guy.
He really is.
I think when you look at it, and I rolled with this for a lot of my careers, I rolled with the idea of personal growth, professional growth, plus cash equal compensation. So your personal growth plus your professional growth plus cash equals my compensation. And I think you have to share that vision with people as well. But that was the mindset I had. And, early in my career, I was sitting with my leader at the time. I negotiated to sit with him one day a month and just observe him to learn. And he said, Frank, these two guys were thinking about hiring in Adrian, Michigan to open an office. And he listed them off. He's like, what's your opinion? And I said to him, John, why is my name not in there? He's like, because you're worth 30 grand as a leader or whatever it was, 50 grand. It was a couple $100,000 job at the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, I sat there and I pondered, and I went through that personal growth plus cash, professional growth. If I move a couple hours away, start up an office from scratch. How much am I going to learn? And so I looked at it, I said at the end of the meeting, I said, John, how about this? I'll do it for $50,000 at the end of 1 year. You pay me what it's worth. He's like, start next week. I remember going home telling my wife, like, hey, baby, I just committed us to move 2 hours south in this hodunk little town. It's a great town, but you're going to have to change jobs. By the way, I'm taking a significant pay cut. But you know, I share that as the second part of the learning of advice maybe is I've always shared with my wife why I'm doing what I'm doing. Always. Mm-hmm. Why are we doing this? Because if I do it, this is where we're going to be positioned a year from now or 2 years from today. You know, and I always wanted her to have the option not to work. And she didn't work. But if she wanted to work, I would have fully supported that as well. I mean, I think staying at home as a mom is an extremely hard, hard job. And I wouldn't have been able to hit the level of success I have if she didn't do that. I mean, I realized that and she realized that. But I always share with Tracy, this is why we're doing what we're doing. This is my picture year 10. This is what I want. And we're saving this much money. We're doing this. And if the trade-off wasn't worth it, then I wouldn't do it. But, you know, for me, that personal plus professional growth, and then add in how much money you make, that's your compensation for the year. And if I can learn an enormous amount and work for less, I know it's the next year. You got to pay me for it. At some phase, you got to pay me for this personal and professional growth. And I think people get away from that. They stop reading new books. They stop listening to podcasts. They stop sharpening their saw. You know, and Covey says it great with his chainsaw analogy is, and for those who've ever chainsaw, I mean, as soon as you hit dirt, that chain gets dull. But you really don't know it because it's getting dull. And to go back and sharpen your chain and focus on personal growth, the money will follow. Mm-hmm. Promise you that. Amen. So that would be my take, Brian.
That is great. And I was confused for a moment of what you were meaning by cash putting in there, because I was thinking when you meant compensation was what you're going to get paid financially, but you're saying those three things together we have to put in not just what you're earning in cash, but also the personal and professional growth is part of your total package.
Hell yes.
I love that.
And it's, you know, I have clients that are engineers at Ford that put them through master's degree, right? That they have to study, but as soon as they get through that master's degree, they're worth more money in that business. Mm-hmm. And I tell them, if your company's willing to pay for a higher education, I mean, I was always blessed. I mean, Doug Lennox, who I am such a fan of, mm-hmm. was my personal coach for damn near 10 years. I talked to him every week. What's the value of that on my future, on being a dad or a boss or a leader or an employee, right? And my whole career, I've focused on how do you get better? What books can you read? What can you reflect on? Who can you talk to? And and you know this as a coach, we're not cheap, but it's pretty damn easy to justify our fee. For sure. And so much of it is expecting that fee and deserving that fee. And I think that the stuff you have said here, Frank, is, I'm learning a lot, but it reinforces so many of the beliefs I've had and has given me so many more things to really consider. I look back at, and I thought about this just actually today as I got my notes out and I was prepared a couple of days ago for our conversation, and I had read your bio, made sure I was up to date on what you're currently doing. And one of the things I coach a lot with my clients who are in a leadership role is, our real role as a leader, a person of influence, a parent, whatever it is really threefold. And I actually stole this from Brendan Burchard, who's an amazing pre-performance consultant, probably the number one in the world. And he said, our role as people of influence is to challenge people how to think at a higher level, challenge them to grow, and role model for them. So it's, get them to think at a higher level, challenge them to grow, and role model for them. And I really can't think of a better person, really, in my 30 years of being a professional that has exemplified that better than you. I really can't. I mean, the chances when I've had the chance to work with you, back when we were at American Express still, or, do some coaching for your teams and things like that around the country, that's really what you did better than just about anybody else.
And I think that's really why you created such an amazing culture and environment, had the success in Portland, Kansas City, then in Boston and in Detroit, because you just were able to exemplify those 3 leadership skills. And I don't really think you probably intellectually I think you were just doing it based on your experience, of course, and your natural ability and the hard work you put into it. But you exemplify those 3 qualities a great deal. You really do.
I appreciate that. It's as you were talking about that, one of my coaches early in my career in the late 90s was Dave Meldal, who's part of Think to Perform with Doug now. I remember talking to him, Brian. I'm like, I don't get it. These guys are not listening. I blew up on somebody. And he talked to me. He's like, Frank, why'd you blow up on him? I'm like, because he just got married. He's got a baby at home, and he's jacking around reading. The guy was reading a novel at the office. I'm like, because he should go home. When he goes home, he should look at that 1-year-old baby and say, this is what I did today. And I'm like, go home and read I've read a novel all day. No, you can't do that. But we went through it. He's like, Frank, what I hear in your voice is you care about this guy. I'm like, yeah, I care about him. He's like, love. I'm like, that's strong, Dave. That's too strong. But I care about him, right? my youth, if you will. And I read Encouraging from the Heart and Managing from the Heart. I still have those 2 books. I loan them out, but I will not give those books out. The 2 originals that I read. And the message was, you can tell anybody anything you want in life if they know you care. If it comes from your heart and it's you want the best for them and they know you want the best for them, you can damn near say anything you want to these people. And I'm still that way. I just say whatever I want to anybody I want, but it's because I care and they know that it's love. It's not me being an ass. It's just Frank cares. He wants to see you win. Mm-hmm. And it's a tough message, but I think that managing from the heart and you have that skill. You can tell people what you want to tell them, Brian. You always have been able to do that and get away with it. But I know you care.
Yeah, I do. Thank you. So, Frank, those were Encouraged from the Heart was one of the books, and Managed from the Heart?
Managed from the Heart was the other one.
Okay. I've never heard of those. I'm actually just wrote those down. And I want the Bamboo Pack just to listen. Okay, I think what you got from this conversation so far is Frank's a highly successful person. I mean, he's climbed the ranks in a Fortune 250 company to one of the highest levels. And retired at a young age, and now does consulting on his own terms. But did you pick up on the fact that he's talked about 5 or 6 books so far? I mean, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, The 1 Minute Manager Meets the Monkey, Mastery, Encourage from the Heart, Manage from the Heart. We talked about the book, The E-Myth, which is now called The E-Myth Revisited. I can't stress enough to the members of the Bamboo Pack how important reading is, or podcasts, or Audible books, however you can get knowledge and wisdom from other people who have been there before, who blazed the trails. It just makes your worth exemplified even that much more. It's an exponential way, and it's, for the most part, it's relatively cheap. And you can do some of these things while you're driving or running or walking or hiking or just cleaning your house. Put a book on tape, Audible, and put your earbuds in and do it. Frank's always been an avid reader and a man who has a strong quest for wisdom, and it's clearly paid off. That personal growth plus professional growth plus cash is your true total compensation. And he really took that when he took a job that was worth $200,000 to $300,000 a year and said, "I'll do it for 50, but at the end of the year," because he knew he was going to get the education and the growth. At the end of the year, you pay me what I'm worth. I mean, that's a lot of balls right there. That's a lot of balls. It took a lot to do that.
I probably should have read Stephen Covey's book a couple times before that, The Stimulus, Pause, Then Respond versus just respond, right?
It's funny, Frank, because, you and I, obviously, we've always gotten along really well. I think we're cut from the same cloth. We came from a small town, hardworking people, and went into the professional world of leadership. But we both are very, very frank with what we say. We don't mince words easily. So I kind of wonder now, but looking back 24 years ago, what those advisors in Portland, Oregon thought when I walked in. And I remember walking in, it was either Bend or Eugene, and somebody was late. And I had just gotten up in front of these people to introduce myself and talk. And I chewed them out. I said, it was like 1 o'clock or something. And I said, "Does everybody have a watch?" And they said, "Yeah." "What time was this supposed to start?" 1 o'clock. "It's 1:02. And they all looked, like 4 or 5 people looked at me. And because I was told this later on after I got closer to some of these advisors, we thought you were the biggest ass. But then a couple hours later, you started talking about your daughter, and we realized you're a real person. So I wonder what they thought when they have you as their field vice president. You bring me out, and I mean, they couldn't escape anything. But you look back, and some of those people are still highly successful today. Most of them are.
Some of the merit prizes. I would say 2 of the 3 top 10 advisors were in that group. I mean, Brian, the success that came out of Oregon is mind-boggling from that. And I think it was just all the learnings of how do you think? We came up with that decision-making model. I don't remember that, the execution model where you ask those 10 questions. And we taught these young people to think. We taught them how to work hard, share with their spouses what they want to accomplish, and put your head down and just get it done.
Yeah, that's what it was.
I don't know if I'd have the energy to do it again, but it was a lot of fun when we did it.
It was a lot of fun. That was a fun ride. I remember, I'm not going to say his name. I don't want to embarrass him, but I remember one young advisor. He was just going into training management in your office. And he wasn't part of my group, but you pulled me aside and said, hey, I got this guy who's a bull in a China store, man. But he's got a ton of talent, and he's just, he just wreaks havoc everywhere he goes, though, with the way his style is. And would you work with him on the side? And I did. So I went up to his office, and of course, I was staying at the Phoenix Inn right across from the office for those 6 months. And I went over there and said, okay, I'm going to be working with you. I said, report to my hotel room tomorrow at 7:00. Go across the street, get to the bookstore, because there was that bookstore across the street, Borders or not. It was the big one out there. I forget what the name of it was. And I said, buy the book Leadership Secrets of Attila the Hun, and come meet me in my lobby at 7:00 tomorrow morning. So for I don't know how many weeks or months we sat there, went through Leadership Secrets of Attila the Hun over coffee at 7:00 in the morning in my hotel lobby. And he still talks about that when I talk with him. And I remember, it was like he was us. He was just 5 years younger, so.
Yeah, what a great book. Leadership is taken, not given. I mean, there's so many good lessons out of that book. And I think I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. And I'm sure he'll listen, and he'll know who we were talking about as well. I know he will, actually. Well, Frank, so, okay, you're working 4 days a month, roughly. You're probably spending more time than that. You're spending more time with Tracy and your children. And what's next for you?
My youngest is a senior in high school, so when she graduates, we'll have a place in Florida, we'll have a place in Michigan. I'll still do consulting, maybe a little bit more. And again, I have a small financial planning practice, so both those businesses I have partners with. So Cascade Coaching was actually developed or opened, if you will, by Jeff Marshall, who's probably one of the top consultants for financial professionals, I would argue, in the United States. Mm-hmm. He works with the biggest advisors, period. And I did it because I wanted to share best practices. I mean, I offer things as a group, and he offers a lot of things for me to do my job better. And the same as I have a small financial planning practice with 3 partners that I hired into the business 30 years ago. And they all do more business than I do, but we like each other. We can count on each other. So I'll probably develop that a little bit more. But I'm at the phase where, I don't have any grandkids yet, so the kids need to move a little faster for me on that one before they get married first.
Yeah.
But that's my next phase, man. I want to be the best damn grandpa there is.
I love that. Well, you're going to have to compete with me. Because I'm a step ahead of you. I have a little one.
We'll tie. How is that?
Okay, we'll tie. Well, yeah, we'll tie for first. Because Jack now is, my grandson is going to be 14 months old at the end of this month, so... But
very cool.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, Frank, everybody tells you this, and it's a whole different level of experience. I don't know what it is, but it's a different level of love. I don't say it's a greater love than you feel for your children, but it's a different love. And maybe because it doesn't come with, when our children were young, many of us were struggling financially. We were trying to find our place in the circle, and we're changing diapers. You're up all night long. So there's a lot of fatigue with it. With the grandchild, you get all the love without all the hard work. So, whoops, sorry, Mike. That's my alarm going off for some reason. All right. So is there one last question? And I'm going to, I don't, for the Bamboo Pack out there, I don't know if you noticed, but I didn't do what I normally do with my guests. I didn't stop and say, okay, I want to capture what Frank just said. I'm going to reinforce what Frank just said, because everything he said was a lesson. I would have been doing that 13 times. And I decided once he started talking, I'm not going to do that. So what I'm going to recommend for the Bamboo Pack listeners is, if you're driving or running or hiking or on your treadmill or at work and you can't, when you get home or when you get to a place where you can sit down, re-listen to this podcast with a pen and paper in your hand, because this was so far, an hour and 6 minutes of nothing but spewed wisdom that actually has been tested and works. And it has worked well for Frank and the hundreds or thousands of people he has led and coached over the course of the past 30 years. But Frank, before we wrap up, is there any question I didn't ask that you wish I would have? Or is there any final message you want to leave with the Bamboo Pack?
I think we covered a lot, Brian.
We did.
One of the things, when I was a regional manager for Ameriprise, I would go to office to office, and I'd hang out with a manager for a day or two and just observe, not say anything. And this advice fits so many times in life for managers. And at the end, I'd have my notes, and I'd say, how'd you think it went? We'd go back and forth, and I'd say, I got one piece of advice for you, but I'm not sure you want to hear it. And they're like, give it to me. And I'd say, you sure? Like, yep, give it to me, Frank, because they knew I was going to get pounded with something, right? And I'd say, if it was you, Brian, I'd say, Brian, if you would just shut the hell up, put a button on your lip, and listen to the people that work for you, your job would be so much easier. And even now as a consultant, I'm one of the few guys that I know of at my level that consulted. I'll still reach out to middle managers or staff people, and I'll just chat for a few minutes, ask them what's going on. People want to give you the solution. It doesn't mean it's always the right one, but if you listen and they have a lot of passion around an answer that's close to what you think is the right answer, I still believe a brilliantly, fully engaged execution of a good idea is better than a poorly executed, brilliant idea.
Amen.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And I just don't think people listen well enough. And now with all the emails and texts, and when's the last time you talked to somebody that works for you? Just tell me what's going on with your family.
Mm-hmm.
How's it going? What's happening? Why, and you just get to know them. And once they know you care, it's different.
Yes.
But leaders don't need the answers. They need the people who can come up with the answers.
I love that. Frank, do you remember back when what we were taught when we were still in leadership and management at American Express was people don't care about how much you know until they know how much you care? I mean, that's exactly what you're saying.
Exactly.
And I love that. Frank, I can't.
And a lot of times people won't listen to you, Brian, until they tell you what's on their mind, because they're looking for a way to put that. And if you just let them tell you at the beginning, and then they'll listen to you.
I can't wait to so many of my, especially young executive clients, hear this podcast, because I'm going to hit them hard with this one. Oh, man. Hey, Frank, this has been amazing. I mean, honestly, and I mean this, I was excited to have you on because I love your style. I just love your experience and your wisdom and your consistent drive for betterment that it can all the time. But it was actually better than I thought even. I can't imagine anybody listening to this hour and some odd minutes that we've had together and not getting, a great deal of life lessons and both personally and professionally. I really love the speed delegation or elimination. I love the personal growth plus professional growth plus cash equals your true total compensation. I love the fact that you've listed so many books that other than and you gave me 2 that I'm going to order today from Amazon that I have never even heard of before. So you stumped me. That's that disarming personality of yours.
That's hard to do.
But I want to tell you, as I said to the Bamboo Pack earlier, Frank gave me my first break in the consulting field with the large Fortune 250 company. And then he also pulled over his Chrysler LeBaron convertible that he had rented at a bookstore that allowed me to buy a book that changed the way I coached for a number of years and brought me a lot of income and allowed me to help a lot of people. But more than that, Frank's just been a good friend, somebody that I know when I talk to Frank, there's no bullshit. He is telling me exactly what he thinks I need to hear, and he's telling me out of love and kindness, and that's just his style. So, Frank, thank you so much for being such an amazing man and a good friend over the years, and thanks for being a phenomenal guest on the Bamboo Lab podcast.
Yeah, you're welcome. I appreciate the opportunity to share some of my thoughts.
You got a lot more, so I have to get you back on. All right, Bamboo Pack. Thank you for tuning in this week. We'll be back in the next few days again. In the meantime, get out there and sculpt your life. Sculpt your life so that you can dig deep down and really, really strive to reach that true peak identity that you have in there, that true peak identity that you deserve to live and that you are designed to live all the time. I appreciate you all.